Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Jonathan Davidson, Senior Vice President, Service Provider Networking, Cisco.
All right. Hello, everybody. It's great to have you all here. You are near the finish line for being here at Cisco Live, and I want to say thank you very much for coming to this session. And I got some very exciting things to talk to you all about today, about where really networks are heading, and how things are going to be transitioning over time, and how we need to rethink some of the basic things that we've been holding kind of near and dear to our hearts over the last several decades. So with that, let me go ahead and jump on in to where we are. You might have seen this before. This is probably my favorite slide to really show where the industry is, where the industry is heading. We all know that we're seeing just massive amount of growth. In the mobile infrastructure, we're seeing that going by over 50% from a CAGR perspective. Now, what this means is not just the bandwidth that is growing, but we're also seeing the dramatic changes of how bandwidth is actually traversing through our infrastructure. We're seeing the fact that networks themselves and how networks are evolving is being forced to change based upon the types of traffic and where traffic is actually originating. So every June or so, Cisco puts out a VNI index. It puts out a set of data to help everyone understand what's actually happening in our industry today. What they put out last June actually helped codify something I've been seeing happening in infrastructure for quite some time, which is data is not originating or from the core of our infrastructure. It's actually being originated from much closer to where our customers actually reside. And so it's been happening for the past several years. Not only that, but we're seeing that continue to accelerate over the next few years. So basically a 20-point swing in traffic origination from the center or the core of our infrastructure to that actually moving to more in the metro, so closer to where our customers are actually residing. What this means is it's impacting the types of boxes that I'm building. It impacts the type of silicon I'm building. And so it's also impacting where we're actually peering with our partners. We most used to peer in the core of our infrastructure, and now those peering points are moving closer and closer to the metro, and it's close and further out as time goes on. Now, what this also means is that the type of architectures that are predominant inside of our customers' infrastructures are becoming to look more and more like fabrics. They're looking more and more like actual data centers traditionally. So a lot of CLO type of fabric designs are getting pushed closer to where our customers actually reside. That's the first point. The second point is we're seeing actually a predominant movement towards automation. Not a single customer conversation goes by that we're not talking about how do we leverage new technologies like machine learning and advanced analytics to transform how we're actually operating our infrastructure. Because fundamentally, everything has changed except for the network. How we actually are deploying applications has fundamentally changed. Everyone is moving to a cloud-native environment. The way that we as consumers are consuming applications has fundamentally changed. In fact, the amount of money and the amount of people that you need to actually start a business and sustain a business went from tens of millions of dollars and hundreds of people 10 to plus years ago to now you need $10,000 to $50,000 and just a handful of smart people and a good idea. So there's fundamental changes that are happening in our infrastructure, and this also is changing how we're actually deploying critical infrastructure as well. So all these things have changed, but we're still manually typing on keyboards to deploy CPE. We're still coming in at 2 o'clock in the morning to upgrade a core router every 6, 12, 18, 24 months. In fact, it traditionally has been a badge of honor when you go and you log into a device and you say, hey, my router's been up and running for 10 years. We should be very proud of that fact. Well, is anyone proud of anybody walking around with an iPhone 4? No, we all make fun of them. It's silly. Nobody wants an iPhone 4. We all want the latest iPhone 10. We want the latest and greatest in technology. And I can tell you, there's probably been a few security bugs in the last 10 years that you might want to have upgraded in your system. So we need to fundamentally change a lot of our basic and commonly held beliefs. We've been looking at the life cycle, at least since I've been in the networking industry for 23, 24 years, of PDIO, plan, design, implement, operate, and optimize. There's a few other steps in there for some people. Validate is sometimes a step for certain companies. But fundamentally, we have organized around a few basic tracks. In fact, our political structure inside of our companies, service providers, have aligned to, hey, we have an engineering team, we have an architecture team, we have an operations team. And what we've seen is for companies that are a bit more forward-looking, where those silos have been breaking over time. So although you still have the same functions of PDIO that you need to encompass, we've been able to break through the barriers. So it's not architecture throwing it over the wall to engineering, engineering throwing it over the wall to operations, but actually how we can make sure that there's joint accountability throughout this entirely new network lifecycle. Because we need to fundamentally look at these things differently. And the people who've been leading the pack, quite frankly, are those in the web scale environment, where if you think about an application team inside of a company like Facebook, the entire pipeline process is built so that if I write my software, I'm actually able to go and get that into millions of people's hands within a couple of hours. However, if you think about the networking lifecycle, if one of my developers commits a piece of code, the likelihood that you deploy that code in any time in the near future is low. In fact, the average is anywhere between 15 to 18 months after one of my developers has committed a line of code, depending when you actually go and deploy that into infrastructure. And that's just not enough. So we need to change how I build my software needs to change to make it easier for you to go deploy things. What that means, we need to change and evolve the networking stack that we've all grown to know and love, like XR. We need to enable you to have a self-healing and self-optimizing infrastructure as well. And also, we need to enable that platform to be open for innovation so that you can move at your pace versus being forced to move at my pace. So that if you want to go and develop applications that sit on top of our infrastructure, you could do that. But if you want to go and program directly into my NPU or program directly into the FIB, that you're actually able to do that as well. So there's a lot of learnings that we have from these companies. Now, fundamentally, this means that there is a new network platform. And when I say platform, I'm not talking about a box. When I talk about a platform, we talk about a network platform of the future that enables you to deliver services at a much more rapid pace than we have traditionally. And so this network platform of the future needs to have significantly new attributes than what we have had in the past. We need to be able to go from when my developer develops a piece of code to when you deploy it to a matter of months, as in a handful of months instead of literally a year to 2 years. We need to be able to get that code out into your infrastructure in a matter of days. So if you have thousands of devices or tens of thousands of devices or hundreds of thousands of devices, we've been told, quite frankly, that even if I get you working software in a period of a couple of weeks, it might take you 6, 9, 12, 18 months to actually get that over into a few thousand devices. What if I were to tell you that we have a customer that actually is able to go and upgrade 10,000 devices a day without impacting the in-service? Would anyone believe me? No. We actually did it last night. We had a customer, we deployed almost 20,000 upgrades in a single network and a single piece of infrastructure, all routers in one day, in fact, in one night. So this is something that is possible. This is all done through automation. And enables you to stay on the cutting edge of where technology is. But that's just one element of this goal for us to get to the self-healing infrastructure. We need to be able to have a whole set of capabilities that are applied to it as well. We need to make sure that we're thinking about security in a fundamentally new way as well. When we think about what's happening in our critical infrastructure, which is what you all deploy today, the way that we have approached security in the past, I would say, has been flawed. So we need a whole new approach to how we look at box-level security, how we look at how these boxes communicate with each other, because there's a tremendous surface that's available for attacks, from simple posture assessment to making sure that the platform that I ship to you, with the BIOS version that I ship to you, with the software that I ship to you, is actually what showed up in your infrastructure and is actually what you turned up. So we have things that we do from the basic box level. We have all these protocols that are going back and forth with each other, and the number of things that we see with how customers are actually able to communicate with each other, the amount of time that your infrastructure is attempted to get hijacked through simple BGP peering and route hijacking. I would guarantee you this is almost happening to you on a daily basis, and you may or may not be aware of that. So we need to think about those things in a net new way as well. And so we think about these things in this transformation that we're going through together as a set of journeys. One is around how we transform looking at that we call mass scale networking, what you might call your critical infrastructure, and how we need to think about how we can lower the cost of moving a bit from point A to point B dramatically, not just through the cost of the individual port, but through looking at things from a new architectural perspective. The second is how do we look at things differently from an automation perspective, not only so we can lower the cost of deploying a new service, but so we actually can treat this as a competitive advantage. Because if you're anywhere inside of the globe and your competitor that you have today, if they decide to automate everything that they do, you will start to lose customers, because customers are inherently happier with providers who have a fully automated infrastructure. It is a fact. We have done lots of polls, and I'll share some of that detail with you in a bit. Now, there's a whole set of architectural transitions that are happening in the infrastructure today, from the movement in the cable space of remote PHY, so taking all the analog interfaces out of CMTSs and pushing them much closer to the customer. We talked about the transitions of moving traditional core, edge, and aggregation infrastructure into fabric. In fact, we have whole sets of customers who are migrating their legacy TDM infrastructure to where they're actually able to emulate TDM and migrate that infrastructure onto a brand new IP infrastructure, but still be able to offer their customers the TDM services they want. So there's a whole set of complex things that are being made easier through architectural transition. And this can be as simple as simply collapsing your multiple core infrastructures into one and having a dramatic savings. Or it could be looking at how your flows of traffic are flowing through your network. We have one of our large customers simply looking at how they have built out their networks over time. When we actually did an analysis of their network, simply going on from a customer, it actually touched 5 different networks before it actually egressed their infrastructure. And there was a phenomenal opportunity to collapse all that down, dramatically reduce the latency, and improve their customer experience, as well as simplifying the physical architecture as well as the control architecture of their overall infrastructure. Now, we talk a lot about technology. We're all technologists in the room. But a big part of this is also transitioning the business models that we're in. There's a few funny things about the networking space. So one is, since I've been here, I don't know who did this, it happened before I joined the networking industry, we have tied everything back to a physical port. So we talk in the construct of how much is a 10 gig port, how much is a 100 gig port. But in reality, when I think about all the effort that my team or any team puts into actually putting a product into your infrastructure, the majority of my team, by far over 80%, is actually software developers. The biggest chunk of my investment is from a software perspective. But if you go and you look at the device when you purchase it from us, the software is probably the lowest cost item on the bill of materials that you receive from us. And so we need to look at value differently as it's being created. Now, this means that there are net new models, whether they're pay-as-you-grow or other interesting models, especially as we start to move towards more of a virtualized infrastructure than what we've been able to do in the past. Now, if we think through the different aspects of what's going to be required in order to create this network platform in the future, of course, we're laser focused on mass scale networking, and that requires us to really push the envelope on a lot of different technology areas. Where's memory going? How are we able to put more memory on a single die, put more onboard memory to enable technology evolution? We obviously are pushing the envelope on analog interfaces known as SerDes. And then we actually are building entire platforms based upon the size of optics. You wouldn't know that every single platform that you've purchased from us over the last decade plus, the form factor is generally derived based upon the size of the optic at that particular generation. But all of these things are moving in different paces and different elements, and we need to be able to bring them all together, tie into the ways that we're transforming the software and thinning that out and enabling you to take advantage of innovating at your pace so that we can go and help drive these things forward. Now, if we take that mass scale networking and we apply it to a few specific examples, we have been partnering very closely with Reliance Jio. So they are one of the main service providers in India. They've been able to go from 0 to over 100 million subscribers in just under 6 months, which is a record by far. They've been able to take an entire country from 140th in bandwidth per capita to number 1 in under 6 months. And they have had an automation-first approach to every single thing that they do. So you could see here the ability to add 7 subs per second, the ability to add over 100 million customers. I think they're north of 150 million customers at this point because it's been another year since they got to that first threshold. And this has really transformed an entire economy. And they actually view themselves as more of a content provider than actually a service provider because of what they're able to add on top of that. Now, Verizon has also been a great co-innovator and co-developer with Cisco in helping us really understand how we can help customers migrate from a TDM infrastructure where I have a set of products that are literally unable to service because they went end of sale and end of support years ago, and how I can continue to deliver that service to my customer on an entirely new infrastructure. Now, there's a whole set of additional collaboration that we've done with Verizon, specifically around the security aspects. So helping to integrate our umbrella product, which came from the OpenDNS acquisition, and integrate that into their security service offering, so you're actually able to protect their enterprises as well as their consumer customers from malware. You probably all know most of malware is achieved by somebody clicking on a link, and then that link is going to some site, probably .ru, and this prevents those click-throughs from happening. Vodafone is another good example, Vodafone Germany specifically, where they have really embraced segment routing as a technology, and this has enabled them to dramatically reduce the number of RSVP tunnels on the network. In fact, they've reduced that by over 18,000 tunnels. So significantly reducing the complexity inside of their infrastructure, number one. And number two, it actually had the side effect of actually dramatically reducing the latency because of the path that's being taken through their infrastructure at the same time. So real tangible benefits that not only I saw from a complexity perspective, but also their customers saw as an outcome as well. So these are 3 examples of transitions that we're seeing from a customer perspective. Now, if we pivot over to the other key element of mass scale infrastructure moving to automation, I like to talk about things in relation to airplanes. Because I think one of the first concerns that operations personnel have is, if I embrace automation, well then what am I going to do? If some piece of software is doing my job, does that mean that I lose my job? So I like to frame things around a pilot. If you're on a plane and you're flying around, you want the pilot to be the best pilot you possibly could ever have. Many of us flew here to Melbourne to be part of this event. I can tell you, I feel good knowing that there's a very well educated and very well trained person in the pilot. Now, if you've taken a look inside of what the pilot sees, there are a tremendous amount of gauges. There's a lot going on inside the plane, but the pilot actually doesn't have to look at all of those gauges at the same time. The computer is actually doing a lot of the flying for the pilot. And the pilot's basically there to make sure that the computer is doing its job. And if something bad happens, you actually want that pilot to be there to be able to handle those things that the computer itself can't handle. I view network operations as a very similar thing. You want the best, highly trained network operations personnel. You want the network to be self-healing and self-optimizing, but you want those network engineers to be able to get problems from the network. You want that data to be augmented so they could decrease the time to remediation into as small as window as possible. Now, what we call this is the closed-loop automation, and I'll talk a bit about what that means. But I think most of us, I would tend to think that we all agree that automation is critical. Automation is actually a competitive differentiator. But the facts are this. We've got 17 billion devices connected to network infrastructure today. And by 2021, which is just 3 years away, we're going to have 27 billion devices connected to the infrastructure today. The network, as we know it, is going to continue to grow at 50% CAGR. There just are not enough network engineers on the planet to be able to deploy all of the infrastructure that we need. And in fact, the infrastructure itself has gotten so complicated that no single network engineer can truly understand how layer 1 and layer 3 actually works at the size of the scale of infrastructure that we're talking about. You need to be able to have tools and software that actually help you pull all of this data together. And then you need to be able to automate that so that you can focus on the highest order tasks in front of you. I'm told in almost every single meeting that I'm in that over 50% of network outages today are still caused by humans typing on keyboards. Today, it's 2018. You could say that you could go back 20 years ago and we could have almost the exact same conversation. So where compute has transformed, the way we deliver applications has transformed, the way even storage has transformed multiple times. And we're still stuck in going and typing on keyboards to deliver things. Now, here's a couple of service providers who I think are well in advance. They are at the cutting edge of automation, and there's still times when people are going in and typing on keyboards. And this is a couple examples. This is not meant to pick upon AWS, Comcast, Level 3, CenturyLink. This just simply is to point out that when humans type on keyboards, we make mistakes. So what you want is you want humans to write software. And that software should talk to systems. And humans should never log into systems for any reason whatsoever. Now, how are we going to get from where we are today to that point? Well, we need a new view of network automation. And so I always find it very useful to attempt to define what we mean by network automation, because I think if we were to poll the audience and say, well, what do you think about automation? Some of us would start talking about OSS, some of us would start talking about BSS. We all would have different views on what automation is. But specifically, when we talk about network automation, we want to take all that knowledge that's in all of your heads and all of your people's heads. We want to take all those rote tasks. We want to put that into software. We want to apply analytics and machine learning to it. And then we want to have that software talk to the infrastructure. That's the goal for network automation. And the way that we're planning on doing that is through 3 key pillars. One is we need to unleash all the data that's inside of your infrastructure. You have a ton of data inside of your NMS, your EMS systems, but that's siloed by vendor, it's siloed by service, it's siloed by platform. You need to get all that data up and out of that system into a common place. That's step number 1. 2, you need to augment that data and make it intelligent, make it knowledge through machine learning and through advanced analytics. And then you need to have a platform that enables you to take that data and take proactive control of your infrastructure. And so we call this set of tools that enable you to do this the Crosswork Network Automation Portfolio. And so there's a few things here. One is we've had 2 products. Automation is not new to the service provider environment. we have had two products for 4 or 5 years now that people have been using to take intent with the network service orchestrator and push that data model-driven intent down into infrastructure. And we've seen tremendous customer feedback on the positive outcomes of being able to do that from a lot of different places. The second is our WAN automation engine, or the ability to go and understand what's happening from a planning perspective as well as from an optimization perspective inside your infrastructure. And just 2 weeks ago, we actually announced 5 new products that enable you to create that closed-loop automation system. So when you think about change automation and health insights, you get to understand what's happening inside your infrastructure. You then have a platform which makes it easy to build that closed-loop automation system. Third, we have a network insights product. That's the only one that's actually specific to routing. The rest of these are multi-domain, multi-layer, and multi-vendor. But this routing product actually helps you understand what's happening from a BGP perspective. So you know if someone's trying to hijack your route. In fact, the outage that happened with Comcast, this particular product was in alpha internally at the time, and within a few seconds, we actually detected the problem. The problem was that it was still in alpha, wasn't in beta, and that particular outage took about 90 minutes to get back up and running. But had they been using this product, we believe they would have been back up and running in a matter of minutes. The Situation Manager is a product that enables you to take all the events and faults, not just from your network infrastructure, but also from your applications, if you're using App Dynamics and elsewhere, bring them all into a single place, and then utilize machine learning and natural language processing to actually group these things into situations so you can very rapidly decrease the time to know what the problem is. There's also aspects of social, which enable you to collaborate across the room or across the globe so you can share knowledge and share insights with each other. And then the last piece is the data platform, which actually is a data lake, which is built upon a Linux Foundation product that we've been driving called Panda.io, which turned that into a Cisco-specific product because we had some requests from customers that didn't want to deploy open source code, but you're more than welcome to do that as well. And it actually enables you to ingest any data in an unstructured way, and then made it very easy to build your analytics capabilities directly on top of that. So these 5 products, plus the 2 existing products, we believe helps you look at that whole life cycle of PDIOO, automate that so you can create the outcomes that you need and you desire. So I wanted to share with you just a couple of use cases from a few of these products. The first is around automated software upgrades, because we still have a tendency to come in at 2 o'clock in the morning and update infrastructure with new software. But that, especially if you think about a core device, there's already a ton of devices around. You actually have network resiliency for a core router, but we still come in at 2 in the morning and upgrade it for some reason. It doesn't make any sense. What you want is a tool that actually is able to do health checks on a regular basis, not just when you want to do an upgrade, is able to do health checks on all the devices around that device, is able to model your infrastructure to say, if you pulled this device out, are you still going to be able to meet all the bandwidth and service requirements of that infrastructure? And then cost it out of the network, upgrade it, bring it back up, do another health check, and then gracefully bring it back on board, and without humans having to be involved. These are basic things that we should have been able to do a long time ago, and it's not just going and building a script for your methods and procedures. It's a lot more than that. That's one example. The second example is detecting challenges within your infrastructure so that you can understand what's happening on a line card basis, a box basis, and a network basis. And you can create your own set of KPIs or key performance indicators. And then you can create triggers on what you want to do based upon these outcomes. Now, this is a platform. This particular product has been in limited deployability since last October. And the reason that we've kept it in limited deployment is because you can literally do anything with this tool. You can take any event, any trigger from the infrastructure, and then you can go and make anything happen. You could go and change routing tables based upon fan speed if you really wanted to do that. And I wouldn't recommend that particular use case. But there's a great amount of power and capability that are built into this infrastructure, and you need to make sure that you're utilizing it in the right manner. This next tool is what I explained around understanding what's happening inside of your BGP network. And so we actually have a set of blogs that will be coming out starting next week one every week on these 5 new products. So check it out. You can follow me on Twitter because I'll be tweeting out when these new blogs come out, or you can just go to our 360 SP page on Cisco.com, and you could see these new blogs that talk about it. There'll be videos, there'll be explanations that go into a lot of detail going through each one of the use cases. I think that you'll find them very, very compelling. Now, as I mentioned, automation is not new to Cisco. It's not new to SP. We've been one of the original people actually taking intent and pushing that intent down into infrastructure through data-driven models. And here's a whole set of customers that actually we've been working with for a very long time to actually enable this to happen. Now, I like to talk about outcomes. And what we've seen is we've been focused on dramatically lowering the time to value. And the time to value is the time between when you come up with an idea, the time when you're actually able to deploy that idea and charge your customer for that idea. That's time to value. We want to, through automation, dramatically decrease that. The second thing is we want to dramatically decrease the time to remediation. This is a time between when you detect a problem, you know what caused that problem, and then you're actually able to repair that problem. We want to dramatically decrease the time to remediation. And what we've seen, and it's not on this particular chart, is that in our polling, customers are actually 40% happier with the service providers who have gone through and actually deployed automation. And this is the actual outcome that we're looking for, utilizing automation as a competitive differentiator to keep your customers happy and enable you to focus on what you need to, which is growing your business. Now, what we shared with today is a few things. One, we talked about a new approach. We talked about the need to use telemetry. We talked about the need to actually simplify your architecture so that you can go and automate your infrastructure. What we didn't talk a lot about, but is also fundamentally, is all these things require new behaviors. And everyone that we've gone through this journey of automation and this transitions of looking at new architecture required us to rethink the way that we've been doing things for the last couple of decades. But those who have seen tremendous benefits, both from a CapEx perspective, from an OpEx perspective, as well as how their customers view them in the infrastructure. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for coming in. I hope you've had a great Cisco Live and hope to see you again next year. Thank you.